welcome to the ski racing podcast with him, Tor Nilsson.
And him, Ed Drake.
Hey, we're back!
We are back! And I'm so excited to be back.
They definitely missed us, haven't they?
Oh, they have. We've had so many messages.
Endless
anyway,
messages.
Firstly, let's explain why we weren't at Solent, or we went out, we didn't film for Solent, we weren't there. I was ill, not corona, but unfortunately we didn't get around to filming it. So this is the first one of the season.
We're in the Hemel Alps.
We're in the Hemel Alps. This is as close as it gets for us. But anyway, what did we see this weekend?
We got underway with the second round of World Cup racing. We had the Lech Zers parallel. So the men were today, hopefully you've just finished watching that, that's why you're watching this. And then yesterday, which was Saturday, we had the women's parallel.
We did indeed, and it was really interesting, and you commentated on both of them. You've literally just come from the studios from doing it.
Hot-footed it.
Hot-footed it, indeed. I hot-footed it from my sofa.
Yes, but only in America. So if you're watching it on Peacock or anything in New Zealand and Australia, anywhere else that speaks English that doesn't use Eurosport, you'd have heard me.
Aren't they lucky?
I can only apologise, but there you go, deal with it.
Anyway, let's crack on with the parallel then. Right, I want to talk to you about this because it is a very controversial event. There's lots of athletes that don't do it. There's lots of people that don't like it. They keep doing it, and it's not quite right. But there is certain elements that aren't right. The half-second situation, for example. Explain to our viewers kind of about it, like what's the deal?
I don't know. I quite like it, but only because I like the head-to-head. I like that it's a bit more raw. It's what it's designed to do is introduce new people to the sport because you don't have to know too much about it. You don't have to know. You don't have to read a clock. You don't watch the 100 meters one person at a time. You watch it grouped together. So they're trying to captivate more people into watching it in terms of the first person across the line wins. A bit like how ski cross at the Olympic Games blows up because everybody goes, hang on a second, that is raw sport. I don't have to be interested in winter sports to know what's going on. So FIS are trying to get in on the action of that, and I kind of get it. I think that they've got the ingredients, but they're not putting it together right. The city events work really well because it's an artificial surface, so it's very even. The snow surface is, it's the same depth across the whole way. Underneath is the same material, but it's expensive in terms of putting it on. Whereas what they try to do with the parallel GSs is find various venues that it suits. Like Lech Zers, the piste itself actually is relatively even, isn't it? In terms of pitches, steepness, from gradient from one course to the other. But the issues you have with somewhere like Lech Zers or any outdoor venue is that you don't know what's underneath the snow, and you don't know what part of the snow's got a lot of depth, what's got not so much depth, what's mostly rock, what's mostly earth. So that all has a difference, especially when the day's warmer like it was. It's only 2-3 degrees, maybe down to minuses at some point through the evening. So one side broke up, which was where the difference in one course to the other came from.
Yeah,
so
because the difference was there, and then you also have this half-second deficit, which I know, and this will come out probably during the week from Christopherson, he was pissed off at this.
Yeah, but we've seen this because we saw it at World Champs, didn't we? Where that was different. That was the set. They do set these races by GPS. It's all GPS position, so it's all they properly spend the money doing it and trying to get it right. But what the half-second is designed to do is designed to mean that you're not totally buggered if you don't finish. So because what you don't want is athletes either not able to risk and race really hard because they're worried about DNFing, or if somebody DNFs then it's just a procession for the next round. It's about TV, isn't it? Sport is entertainment.
Yeah.
So what they've tried to do is limit the loss, and they think that half a second is just about close enough that you're still in with a shout, although it's very unlikely. But what you can't do is factor in to that scenario that one course being so different to the other. And what it means is that the first leg has a half a second cut off, so that's as far as you can be apart. But on the second run, where it's first across the line, because you've already had that deficit at the top, they don't limit the deficit. So in theory, you could finish 2 seconds behind. Whereas your opponent may have been 2 seconds behind you on the first run,
but it's
only been limited to half a second.
Now they did talk about it on Eurosport, which I watched. Nick and Finley, they were saying should it go up to 0.75, for example, for the Olympics? Is there tweaks? Do you think that?
I don't think that fixes it. I don't, because then you then 0.75. We'll talk about it a little bit later down the line, but it's only 19 gates, 22, 25 seconds. So 0.75. It's a massive margin. So all things being equal, with cold conditions, we wouldn't have had any issues today because the warm weather meant that the snow surface was different from one course to the other, not the course set, not the gradient of the pitch. You go out to 0.75 seconds, you're never going to make that up.
No.
I mean, you're very unlikely to make up half a second, but 0.75, you may as well, but what's the point?
The problem being that it's also in November and the weather is what it is. So, but anyway, you think that they have the right ingredients, they might get it right.
I understand why they're doing it, and I understand the thought process behind it, and I like head-to-head battles. I
really
like
cool.
the fact that you see one guy looking across at another guy, that guys and girls, athletes, you look across at the other athlete, and you really test your mettle. It's a different skill set, it's a different mindset, and it's. I think there's space, but it's not right at the moment. That is definite.
No. And before we go into the details of the actual races, you said, it's 19 gates. What really makes a difference? Is it your reaction times? Is it the servicing of skis? Is it the snow? Is it what are the elements that are different to when you're doing a full race?
Basically, a lot of the thing is how many runs you're doing. So if you are made the finals, you have 2 rounds of 16, 2 rounds of quarters, 2 rounds of semis, and 2 rounds of finals. So there's a high volume there. So the technicians are working really hard because you've got 6, 7, 8 pairs of skis ready to go, so that when you take off your ones at the bottom,
so they get a new pair
another
every
set
time
at the top.
Right.
Then those are then the ones that have been taken up with you. They're filed and tuned and top waxed, top coated, and all that while you go down. And also then you'll still have ones with different grinds on, depending on the snow surface, depending on what your feel is of the snow as it's changing through the evening. So they'll have multiple things there. I don't think you can't win by having a good start, but you can lose by having a crap start. So if you don't, if you push out too early, and we saw people push out too early, and more so in the women's event than the men's event. We also saw the gate not opening in the women's event, which is slightly different, but you also saw people go too early and then the gate drop, and obviously that just halts any momentum that you've got from that big tug out of the gate.
Of course.
So you can't win, but you certainly can lose.
Cool. And then before we get to the podium, should we talk a little bit about Charlie Raposo?
Who's he?
No idea.
Never heard.
Let's move on.
No.
Great effort from Charlie. He had a start bib of 51. And I know we've got lots of viewers all across the world, but for the British, it's a really big deal. Charlie did well. He was, I think, 300ths away from getting into the next stage.
Yeah, definitely. He skied well. It's his best performance counts for overall points. So he picks up World Cup points, his first ever World Cup points. It's his 17th in a World Cup, and that's going to give. He's not short of confidence. But it will give him more confidence. But I think the big goal for Charlie is definitely going to be to get that start number down, because we talked about it in the actual podcast, that how often does anybody make a second run from a bib in the 60s or higher? You hear bibs in the 40s, 30s and 40s obviously that make the second run, but nobody very often makes it from the 60s. And if they do, it's very rarely going to be in a position that's going to alter your start number, really, because of the way World Cup starters points work. So great performance, really chuffed for the guy, because he's been knocking on the door with some good runs and good turns, but hasn't been able to put it down until today. He'll be frustrated, but it'll be good. But he took advantage. We have a lot of people not starting, didn't we? From the men's side, we had. Are you ready? Have you got a pen and paper? So
this is bingo.
No. So the men missing: Odermatt, Mayer, Maurissier, Kavietzel, Kilder, Brathen, Voss Solivag, Feller, Mathieu Fevre missing. Plus, Pantero was quickest in the opening run of the qualies, and then DNF. So that's another big name that didn't
an absolute
make it.
Disaster for the prediction league.
Predictions league went straight
disaster.
out the window. But what it does, if anybody's picked up any points from either the men's race or the women's race, they deserve double points.
They do.
But my point, I think, and in the women's race, we'll talk about that later properly, but Schiffer and Vlhova, Robinson, Brignoni, Goggia and Worley, and there must be others, but those are sort of headliners. So what we saw from both sides was lesser known, which sounds really condescending, and but
lower start bid, the numbers.
Yeah, guys that you don't expect to see at the sharp end, chucking their hands in the air and having some mega performances.
And also, if you look at it from a financial perspective, they're winning 45,000 Swiss franc.
Yeah.
That's a decent amount of money for guys who aren't on huge sponsorship.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a massive difference to that. But actually, I would, having never won a World Cup, but I would rather see that filtering down a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think you get like about €1,000 for finishing 16th, 17th, 18th, something like that. I can't remember exactly. And that drop off, that's a big drop off. And actually, the big teams and the guys that win, they don't need the money. It's the guys that are sort of struggling to break in that need the money. So I think I would prefer, I mean, these guys are making tons of money out of sponsorship, which obviously is totally their own. So I think prize money, I'd prefer it to filter down slightly.
Let's just remove it.
We'll give some to us.
Give some to us, yeah. That's your best point all day.
Yeah, there we go.
Anyway, let's
sometimes.
move on to the race that we've just seen, the men's, which was really exciting. It was really fun to get parallel back. Christopherson, I thought he looked smooth, he looked powerful, he didn't look angry like a little angry baby.
Until the end.
Until the end, which I was going to get to.
Yeah,
he looked really focused, apart from a little snowball down his neck every time.
Just, get fired up, making sure you're ready to go.
But he couldn't deliver in the end. And in the end, it was his teammate, because it was an all-Norwegian small final, third place playoff, and an all-Austrian final. Big final.
Big final.
Sorry, big final.
I think Christopherson, we've talked about this on the podcast, that I think because he's had a couple of seasons where he's not been the main man, where I think he's actually had to maybe rethink his attitude a little bit, and that sounds like I'm having a dig. I'm not having a dig, but I think he's sort of had to come away and I think break his character down a little bit and try and rebuild, because he's obviously still got the skills, they're just not able to put them down in a run, or 2 runs. So I think maybe we're seeing a slightly different side of him, but I was pleased to see a little bit of fire back. Because we need the fire in the fist.
I loved the toys coming out.
Yeah, and they weren't proper toys. I mean, he maybe chucked a couple of little rubber duckies, but he didn't go massive, did he? I want to see some.
Nah, he would have done later on. I was actually wondering if you saw, because we annoyingly had instant replays during that time, so you would have actually seen proper footage.
He was annoyed, but he was annoyed because of the circumstances.
Yeah.
He wasn't annoyed for his teammate, because Attlee McGrath coming back. Picking up his second ever World Cup podium off the back of his injury in Adelboden last season. What a way to come back from injury.
Yeah, I mean, fair play to him. And genuinely, Christopherson did look happy for him.
Yeah, it was interesting because they're countrymen, but they're not teammates, are they? Because Christopherson he's a solo man.
What a shock. Anyway, moving on to the big final, the all-Austrian big final. It was Rashner versus Hirschbull. And again, these guys had never been on the podium. First World Cup podium. The Austrians looked, I mean, they were so happy, that coaching team. Oh my God, it looked like a pressure off their shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, as ever, an Austrian winner in Austria is definitely welcomed.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's a seriously high pressure scenario for those guys over there. But Rashner was quickest qualifier. He skied very well. He got lucky a couple of times with a couple of rounds where opponents fell that looked like they would at least go close. But you have to be in it to win it, and you have to go the right side of every game. You have to stay on your feet to the finish line. So ultimately, and he was quickest qualifier, so he wasn't there by any sort of accident.
Yeah.
But he took advantage of it. But he got done over by his teammate Christian Hirschbull, 31 years old, picking up his first ever World Cup.
And he looked unbelievably happy.
And I'm actually really pleased with it, because we talk about the Austrians and the pressure of being an Austrian skiing in an Austrian race, but he's been around and he's got over 100 and something World Cup starts. So he's been around for a long time and hasn't ever reached the top, the Austrian top, which is the only place that's good enough, which is podium. And so to give him his due, like for him to stick around that long, I think it's really good. And I was really pleased, and I was genuinely really pleased for him.
And he did it, with 700s. It's a decent win in terms of that kind of course. Anyway, let's have a look how he did it.
And here is that final run. Rashner on the left, Hirschbiel on the right. Half a second Hirschbiel had to find over the quickest qualifier, and that is a really tough task. But it was mostly down to the snow conditions, which is a real shame, as we've spoken about. But a lot of that deficit will be done here. You can see that snow surface just coming into view on the right foot there of Rashner, right in there. That is not a nice surface, and it also means that it's soft, so that when he goes to put the pressure on, it just doesn't arc its way through, it bounces into that hole, and then he hits the soft stuff. Annoyingly, the camera changed angles. But basically, that is where a lot of the speed was lost. And you can see Hirschbiel from here on in, he just starts to close that gap, and he's carrying so much more speed across and onto the flats. And he's got the man in his sights, hasn't he? And it came to this final roll. As you see them come over, they're about neck and neck, aren't they? Right close on each other. And Hirschbiel just stomps on those right-footed turns coming over the roll. And you can just see that Rashner on the left just loses that outside foot. Take a look at what happens to that outside ski. And so all that means is the pressure that he's built up, he's trying to transfer that, obviously, down and round towards the next gate. Hirschbiel, nothing happens to his skis, and he's able to power down and bring the pressure and bring the momentum down towards the gate. But what happens to Hirschbiel is, but when that ski goes away from him, the pressure is lost, and it ends up losing the pressure build-up, which then ends up making him carry less speed because that pressure build-up has been wasted. It's been sent out to the side. So frustratingly there, that was the difference. And you can just see Hirschbiel carries a bit more speed across the finish line, and he's got the difference, and he's got the jump, and the 31-year-old picks up his first World Cup win.
And we're back to talk about the women's, which happened on Saturday in Leicester as well. You also commentated this event.
Lots of talking for a bit.
God, don't we know it? And and it was the same kind of story as the men's in terms of lots of the big stars didn't go, or like Gut Barami, who was doing her 300th start, she skied out. And she was one of the only kind of big names still left.
Yeah, I think she's probably the biggest name. She was probably the biggest name left in that, and Liensberger, really. And so, with all those big names we spoke about earlier, Schifrin, Vlhova, Robinson, Brignoni, Goggia, Worley not starting, Gut Barami had an awesome opportunity to pick up some overall World Cup points. There's no World Cup
valuable. Overall.
So there's no parallel points because there's only one parallel, so there's no globes. There's no parallel points, and there's also, that doesn't count for GS points for a separate discipline. So it's just counted for overall points. So Gut Barami goes in there. She was, I think, 5th or 6th in the quali, so she's skiing well. She was rapid here last year and had a great opportunity to pick up some really big points, but fluffed her lines a little bit and ended up finishing in 15th, which... a big missed opportunity.
A couple of points.
Actually, with it being 15th, it's still not decent because it drops off really quickly. But so she still picked up some points, and
it could count as something.
Yeah, well, we talked about it. I mean, it is early to get overexcited about picking up points and she's leading the overall, yada yada yada. But actually, come to the end of the season, it could easily be separated by tens or single-figure points. So this could be 15th place could be the difference between her winning the overall and not. If we look back at this in 5 months' time, so she dropped the ball. Liensberger also dropped the ball, finishing in 16th. And considering she's the world champion parallelist,
sure.
Yeah,
let's go for it. I like it.
Another ball dropped.
But if we talk about the people who actually kind of podiumed,
shall we? So but first, the conditions were very similar, weren't they? So it wasn't actually very hard, the snow surface that is. So there was a lot of water put on, a lot of salt was used to try and harden up that ground. and it sort of worked, but it sort of didn't. But so the women's course, if you'll notice when you look at the two videos, the women's course was a bit more offset than the men's, and they did that because the extra power that the men had, they didn't want them doing such big offsets, because obviously that cuts into the snow more. But I think that in terms of the actual race surface, it held up better for the women, and I think that the race course itself from red to blue was much more even.
And it was, I mean, just talking about the weather in terms of the light, it was tricky light because of that kind
Early
of...
on, it's not really a night race, is it?
That's almost the problem, right? So you saw it in the men's today as well, but it was kind of like twilight with a bit of cloud and a bit of, you get some crazy shadows.
The women had that's a big snowstorm between quali and race. So
you get a lot of shadows and it's really tough.
Yeah, I think it was tough. That's why
you can't underestimate. What I'm saying is you can't underestimate how difficult it actually is to do those 19 days in that speed and basically ski out.
Well, not ski out. It's always the aim of the game tour. That's why we've got the ski expert.
You were really good at skiing out, so anyway, let's move on. So Norway's Kristin Lystad took third.
She did, yeah.
She did?
Yeah, she did.
Have you got anything to say about that?
That was her PB, first World Cup podium.
I mean, we can say that about quite a lot of these.
Yeah, exactly. But in individual, she's done well in team parallel events. But yeah, she skied really nicely. She's got great dynamic style that really suited that sort of short, sharp pressure that you need in this parallel discipline because there isn't the offset that we're normally seeing. So she was pretty consistent. She put one down.
And then the
Bassino, which is no slouch. Bassino is very handy. She's podiumed in this discipline before.
And actually, to be fair, a big name. Well, maybe we should have actually mentioned. Yes. Quite a big name.
In terms of being on the start list? Yeah, but not really going for the overall though, because she doesn't really do enough disciplines yet. I'm sure she's been training on them. But so
then the big final was Norway versus Slovenia.
It was.
So it was Thea Louise Kransund, or how do you?
Stenesund.
Yeah. From Norway.
You're not Swedish. How can you not pronounce it?
What, Kransund?
Is that how you're supposed to say it?
Well, that's how you say it in Swedish. Anyway, she was beaten by 0.12.
Yes.
By Andrea Schlocker.
Yeah.
That's how you pronounce it.
Is it?
Well, that's what you told me.
I mean,
I'm going to work on my pronunciation this season.
I've been ripped by people for saying people's names wrong, so...
Well, not as much as I rip you for your jumpers. Anyway, this was a really good race, to be fair.
Yeah, no, it was. Stenesund was the leader through the quali. She looked supreme every single round. The only time she really put foot wrong was in that second run of the big final. About 2/3 of the way down, she just went slightly direct. Really small mistake, and that was enough. And that cost her. But she won the qualification by 0.4 of a second, which is huge.
Yeah.
It really is. But Schlocker, she very, very nearly went out in the first round against Coralie Frassombe, the French lady. And it was, I think she only got through by a few hundredths. And that would have been a very different night.
Yeah.
I spoke to a Swedish friend of mine, a Slovenian friend of mine. He said that he's coaching the men's team, and he said they were all off having a few bevies last night.
That's what I did hear that as well. They had,
both of those, all three of those ladies picking up PBs. Yeah, Schlocker going straight for the top step of the podium, and she leads the overall.
And do you think
overall leader?
There you go. And do you think any of these are people we should be looking for this season or in the future, or
yeah, definitely. I think it is a different discipline. So, and because this doesn't count for GS points, World Cup or World Cup starters points, it doesn't give them a helping hand to a better start number. So they've still got to get into the top of the GS standings the hard way. So I don't anticipate we'll see them maybe winning a GS World Cup in this season. Prove you wrong by all means. That's the downside. Because this is a standalone event. It's not like this is going to transfer into, a great start number for the next GS.
Let's have a look and see how the final went down.
And here is the women's run. Stenesund on the left, Schlocker on the right. Stenesund really didn't put a foot wrong. but it was she who made the mistakes towards the bottom that cost her dearly. But it was Slokar, slightly slower out of the blocks, and Stenesund really still had it in the pocket. The conditions not quite in terms of underfoot, not quite as bad as the men's, obviously visibility-wise, definitely not the same with that driving snow. But Slokar still has to try and make up a good ski length or so over Stenesund, who's coming in. Look at that, good ski length, I'd say, in front, but it's coming across the flats. And this was where Slokar really found the power. She really looked to get clean purchase at the start of the turn to carry the speed. And this was where Stenesund lost it, really. What became her undoing. If you just see here, Slokar, quite not the best position, but she made this little mistake at the top of the steep. But if you're going to make a mistake, this is the place to do it. And all she does there just loses that outside ski. But because you're making this mistake at the top of the steep, you're instantly able to get speed back again. If you make that sort of mistake on the flat, she doesn't win this race. So she makes a small mistake there. She comes a bit more direct into this next turn than she would have planned, but she absolutely stomps on that left foot and just carries loads of speed. You can see Stenesund cuts in very close onto this gate, just gets a little bit twisted up as she then looks to try and power the skis across. The skis come together, and then this was where Stenesund lost it. So if you just keep an eye before she disappears out of view, that banner's just about in the wrong place. You can see that outside ski getting away. And what happens with that outside ski is that because it moves this way, let's do it slightly higher up, because the ski moves across there, that energy is then sent laterally across the hill rather than round here and into the next turn. You can see what Slokar's doing here. She's very powerful around that turn. That outside ski tracks right from the off, and she's able just to drive and put that power down. Look at the difference in separation here. So good separation here, no separation here. Just means that all that pressure then, like we say, is coming across this way. She loses momentum, and that is the difference between winning and coming second. And it was as close as you like, but it was Slokar by 0.05 of a second to claim her first ever World Cup win.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Ed. Right, where are we heading off to next?
We are heading to Levy.
Yes, we are.
And it's double,
Finland, that is.
Yeah, Finland, where the reindeers are. We're going for double slalom, women only. Men have got the weekend off because they're travelling out to North America. If you're a speed racer, one of the lads. If you're not, then you're just training doing about 1,000 turns somewhere else. You may as well do it here at the Hemel Snow Centre. So, yeah, we're in Levy.
Perfect.
Ultimately, that was the whole point of that. We're in Levy.
Great, we're in Levy. Very exciting. Now, remember to head over to skiracingpodcast.com to do the Predictions League, which is in full force. So it's going to be a weird.
Yeah, I think the leaderboard will look very similar to it did before this weekend's
yeah,
race.
But we've got some amazing prizes coming up. We haven't announced them yet, but we've got some very exciting partners to give stuff away to the winners. So that's cool. Your podcast will be out on tomorrow, Monday, with who's on that? Ben?
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So no, actually, either Ben or Marcel. I don't think both.
Right.
Their egos have got too big.
They might even drag me into it. Who knows? Probably. I'm busy. I'm washing my hair.
Yeah,
anyway, that's it. Thank you to Hemel Snow Centre, by the way, for letting us film here.
Nice one. Until next time. Bye for now.